Right now, while every other team on the grid is on holiday, the lights inside the McLaren Technology Centre in Woking are still on. Double shifts, weekend rotations. McLaren's first major upgrade package is heading to Miami, and the target is clear: a few tenths of a second from the chassis. That might not sound like much, but the last time McLaren brought an upgrade to Miami, Lando Norris won his first ever Grand Prix. The time after that, Oscar Piastri won too. Nobody was paying much attention to McLaren's upgrade plans 3 weeks ago. The defending constructors champions had just watched both of their cars fail to reach the grid in Shanghai, knocked out by separate electrical failures before the formation lap. The talk around McLaren was about survival, not strategy. About whether the MCL40 was broken at its core, whether the title defense was already over before the season had properly started. That conversation is about to change. McLaren's 2026 season has been one of the strangest starts any reigning champion has ever had. In Melbourne, Norris qualified 6th and finished 5th, more than 50 seconds behind George Russell's dominant Mercedes. Piastri qualified 5th, but never made the start. On his warm-up lap to the grid, the power unit sent 100 kilowatts more than expected. The rear tyres lost grip on a curb at the Turn 4 exit, and the car slammed into the barrier before the race had even begun. Shanghai was worse. The sprint weekend started well enough, with Norris 4th and Piastri 6th in the sprint race. Then both cars hit separate electrical failures before the Grand Prix. McLaren's first double failure to start in over 20 years. Kimi Antonelli won for Mercedes, and the gap in the constructors' standings blew wide open. Then came Suzuka, and something shifted. Piastri qualified 3rd, launched into the lead at the first corner, and for 20 laps looked like the fastest driver on the circuit. A safety car caused by Oliver Behrman's crash mixed up the order, and Antonelli came through to win. But Piastri held second, finishing 13.7 seconds behind the winner with real pace. Norris fought back from a messy weekend to finish 5th, 28 points in a single afternoon. More than the first 2 rounds put together. Think about what that means for a second. A car that could not even reach the starting grid in Shanghai was fighting for the lead at Suzuka 2 weeks later. Nothing changed on the MCL40 between those 2 races. Same parts, same floor, same wings. The only thing that changed was the track. Suzuka's long, flowing corners let Piastri lean on the car's front-end grip and hide the rear downforce weakness that had been killing them at tighter circuits. He drove around the problem, and the team took notice. The mood inside McLaren after the Japanese Grand Prix was telling. The team shocked themselves with how fast the car was around Suzuka. They were not supposed to be in a spot to fight for the win, not with the current setup. The track layout played to the MCL40's strengths. The long high-speed corners suited its stable front end, and the Mercedes power unit underneath gave one of its cleanest weekends of the season. But behind closed doors, the verdict was blunt. The chassis still needs work. A few tenths. That is the gap between now and then, threatening the podium and fighting for wins every weekend. The bigger picture shows why the MCL40 sits where it does. The car showed up on the grid in Melbourne, with the shortest wheelbase of any Formula One car in 2026, roughly 15 centimeters shorter than the max allowed, and clearly more compact than the Mercedes and the Ferrari. That was a planned choice. A shorter car is lighter, quicker through direction changes, and gives engineers more room to play with weight balance. The trade-off is floor area. Under the 2026 rules, the floor and diffuser are the main sources of downforce, and a shorter floor makes less of it than a longer one. The result is a car that is stable, smooth, and neatly built, but one that lacks the raw cornering grip of its longer rivals. The gap breaks into 2 halves. Roughly 50% comes from power unit use. Mercedes, as a works team, has years of deep knowledge about how the chassis and power unit work together. McLaren learns on the fly, reacting on track rather than leading the work from the factory. The other 50% is pure aero, downforce, corner entry speed, mid-corner load. To put that in real terms, a few tenths per lap across a full race distance at Miami adds up to roughly 12 to 15 seconds over 57 laps. That is the gap between a podium finish and 6th place, between fighting the Mercedes cars on track and watching them pull away in the first stint. Every fraction McLaren can claw back from the floor, and the bodywork turns into positions on the grid and points in the standings. The upgrade heading to Miami targets that aero half head-on. Floor gains and drag cuts are the confirmed focus areas. New bodywork designed, wind tunnel tested, and fine-tuned across 5 weeks of unbroken factory time, while the rest of the paddock sits idle. The wider picture around McLaren makes this upgrade even more urgent. Mercedes has won every single race in 2026. Every one. Antonelli, at 19 years old, has won back-to-back Grand Prix in Shanghai and Suzuka to become the youngest championship leader in Formula One history. Russell has been on the podium in all 3 rounds. The Mercedes edge is roughly half a second to 8 tenths, built on better energy management software and years of joined-up chassis and power unit work that no customer team can copy overnight. Ferrari sits second in the standings on 90 points, with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton landing regular podiums but unable to turn strong race starts into wins. A power gap of roughly 15 brake horsepower to Mercedes keeps them as steady threats rather than winners. Red Bull, meanwhile, has fallen off a cliff. Max Verstappen sits ninth in the Drivers' Championship with just 12 points. The car is widely seen as undrivable, and there are growing questions about whether the four-time world champion even wants to keep racing under the 2026 rules. The four-time back-to-back Constructors' champions are tied on 16 points with Alpine. 16, that is the field McLaren is trying to break into. Mercedes at the front, Ferrari are locked in second, and a huge gap behind them where Red Bull used to be. A few tenths from the chassis would not close the gap to Mercedes fully, but it could put McLaren into the fight for podiums at every race, rather than just the ones where the track happens to suit the car. And in a championship that runs for 24 rounds, podiums add up. Here is the maths that makes this scary for Mercedes. If McLaren gains 2 or 3 places per race through this upgrade, that is roughly 8 to 12 extra points per weekend. Over the 21 rounds left after Miami, that swing could be worth 200 points or more across the season. Mercedes built their 89-point lead, while McLaren was still learning the car. They will not get that kind of head start again. If you are following McLaren's 2026 title defense and want to stay ahead of every step as it happens, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss a single update. We cover every upgrade, every race weekend, and every shift in the Constructors' Championship battle. The upgrade package is only as strong as the place where it lands, and there is no better circuit on the calendar for McLaren right now than the Miami International Autodrome. Norris won the 2024 Miami Grand Prix, his first ever Formula One win on his 110th start, coming from 5th on the grid to win by 7.6 seconds over Max Verstappen after a mid-race safety car. It was McLaren's first win since Daniel Ricciardo's 2021 Monza victory, and it ended a dry spell that had lasted nearly 3 years. One season later, Piastri won the 2025 Miami Grand Prix from 4th on the grid, leading a dominant McLaren 1-2 by 4.6 seconds over Norris. The nearest non-McLaren car, Russell's Mercedes, finished over 37 seconds behind. There is a pattern buried in those results. The Miami Grand Prix has never been won from the front row, not once in 4 editions. Every winner has come from 3rd or lower on the grid. That rewards race pace over one-lap speed, tyre care over raw push, and smart strategy over pure downforce. That is the exact profile of a team showing up with a fresh upgrade and 2 drivers who already know how to win at this track. The timing is not a fluke either. In 2024, McLaren showed up to the first 5 races without the fastest car. Red Bull was dominant. Verstappen was winning everything. McLaren was quick but not a threat. Then came round 6, Miami. McLaren brought an upgrade package that turned the MCL 38 from the 4th fastest car into arguably the fastest. Norris won the race, and from that point on, McLaren outscored every single team on the grid, eventually passing Red Bull for the Constructors' Championship. The key detail from 2024 is what the upgrade actually changed. It was not a small tweak. McLaren redesigned the floor edge, reshaped the undercut beneath the side pods, and added a new rear wing that cut drag on the long straights while keeping grip through the slower corners. The lap time gain was immediate and obvious. Norris was not just faster in the race, he was fastest in every single practice session that weekend. The car went from being hard to set up to being fast in every condition. That is what a well-timed floor upgrade can do when the base car is sound. The echoes of 2026 are too clean to wave off. McLaren enters Miami as the defending champion with a car that has not yet hit its peak. The first major upgrade is locked in for the same venue. The team's 2 drivers have won the last 2 editions of the race. Even the pecking order rhymes with 2024. Back then, McLaren was chasing a dominant Red Bull. Now they are chasing a dominant Mercedes. Different rival, same game plan. But there is one thing that did not exist in 2024, active aero. The 2026 rules brought movable front and rear wings that change shape at speed, and the way those wings interact with the floor is something no team fully understands yet. An upgrade that gains 3/10 in the wind tunnel could gain 2 on track, or it could gain 4. The new rules make every upgrade a bigger gamble than it used to be. McLaren's engineers know this. That is part of why they are running double shifts. Mercedes leads the constructors' standings on 135 points. Ferrari sits second on 90. McLaren is third on 46. That 89-point gap to Mercedes matters, but 3 races into a 24-race season, it is nowhere close to out of reach. McLaren scored roughly 60% of its total 2024 points after the Miami upgrade landed. 60% of the 2026 season is still left after round 4. The story the rest of the paddock is telling itself goes something like this. McLaren is in trouble. Mercedes cannot be caught. Antonelli is the future. The title defense is falling apart. And if you only look at the points table through 3 rounds, that story holds up. But the other side of that story is sitting in Woking right now, being put together on factory floors in the McLaren Technology Centre and at the McLaren Racing Composites facility. It has a ship date, a target track, and a goal measured with rare precision, a few tenths. Miami is a sprint weekend, which squeezes the schedule hard. Teams get a single 60-minute practice session before sprint qualifying on Friday, followed by the sprint race and Grand Prix qualifying on Saturday, and the Grand Prix on Sunday. There is almost no time for on-track testing. If the upgrade works the way the sim and wind tunnel data say it should, the sprint format rewards bold moves. If it does not, there is very little room to fix it. That is why the 5 weeks of April matter so much. McLaren is not just building new parts, they are checking them across hundreds of sim runs, matching wind tunnel data with the real-world numbers pulled from 3 very different circuits: Melbourne, Shanghai, Suzuka. 3 data points that tell engineers where the model lines up with reality and where it falls apart. Every extra day in the factory before the freight deadline is another tweak, another pass, another chance to show up in Miami with parts that work on track exactly the way they worked in the tunnel. The lights in Woking are still on, the freight containers are being loaded, and somewhere inside a facility that has built 20 championship-winning cars, engineers are finishing the parts that will either save McLaren's 2026 title defense or prove that this season belongs to someone else. Miami is 4 weeks away. McLaren has been here before, twice. Both times, they won.